You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to the program. Joining me now, Colonel Mike Hagar. He is the director of the Arkansas State Police. He's the secretary of the Department of Public Safety.
Yes,
you
sir.
wear two hats. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Terrible circumstances kind of bring us together initially, although we will talk about some things beyond the Fordyce mass shooting that happened. But walk me through that day for you, just from your law enforcement perspective, how quickly you learned about things, how quickly you guys sprung into action.
Right. So we were at a troop meeting in Hot Springs. We were meeting with our personnel at Troop K, and I initially received a text from our Highway Patrol Major and let me know that we were dealing with an active situation in Fordyce. And of course, a lot of times we get that information real time, but you really have no way of knowing exactly the extent of it. So, you know, the human in you wants to believe, well, it's not going to be as bad as what it appears to be. But I stepped out and I called Sheriff Mike Knadel, who is a good friend of mine and just a, you know, he's honestly a legend in law enforcement.
Been there a while,
he's been around for a long time. And anyway, I called the sheriff and just said, Sheriff, I heard what's going on. What do you need? Where do you need our guys? What can we do to help you? Not knowing that he was actually intimately involved in this situation. He was on scene. He was actually engaged in the firefight that stopped the suspect. So when I spoke with the sheriff, it was the first that I realized the gravity of the situation. And so we kind of rushed through the troop meeting and you know, got what we needed done there, and we immediately got in the car and started to Fordyce. And en route to Fordyce, we started hearing the initial numbers, and we started hearing the initial reports of you know, how serious the situation was. And then of course, once we arrived on scene, spoke with the sheriff, the police chief, spoke to law enforcement personnel, our personnel and others on scene, and saw firsthand what we were dealing with. It was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to kind of look at things from a law enforcement perspective and say everything definitely went right in terms of how law enforcement reacted in this respect? Here's some areas where we might want to work on some things to improve. Have you gotten to that level yet?
You know, so with a lot of things in law enforcement, you know, there's that initial response, and there's the criminal aspect of the investigation, and then there's an appropriate time that you start looking at things from an administrative side of what we did right, what we did wrong. I can tell you from what I've seen so far, because we're still in that investigation phase right now, but from what I've seen so far, the men and women of the Fordyce Police Department, the Dallas County Sheriff's Department had an incredible response. Literally, we're on scene within 2 to 3 minutes. I don't have the exact timeline in front of me, but just an amazing response, so fast to arrive on scene and then deal with that situation. So after the fact, you know, we'll look more in depth, you know, not necessarily, it's not our place to critique them and the way they acted, which I don't know that there's anything to critique. You know, again, it was an incredible response. From our standpoint, we'll look at the resources that we applied and, you know, see if there's anything that we can do better in support of them. But from what we've seen right now, I mean, the response by law enforcement was incredible.
Yeah. I asked that question a little bit more just from the lessons learned perspective. Does that translate into internal changes, regulatory changes? Does it even rise to the level sometimes, not just this incident, but other incidents where you say we need a law change so that we can respond to something a little bit differently? You
know, again, that's, from my standpoint, it's probably a little premature now because we're still trying to wrap our head around the criminal investigation side of things, but you know, not necessarily. I mean, not from where I sit right now. Now, obviously, you know, how do you prevent something like that? You know, how, in this situation specifically, human nature, you just want to know why. And we have no idea why.
We still don't know motive, do we?
We still do not, no sir.
Yeah.
You know, that's obviously going to be a key component of the investigation, and our investigators are working tirelessly on that. And, you know, I would ask people that if they have any idea, if they have any window, you know, of course, he has chosen not to speak with our investigators, and you know, so we're looking in other directions to try to uncover a motive. But right now, I mean, we simply don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no idea, and it's very difficult. I can't imagine. You know, we spoke before we started about being parents, and as a dad and as a brother and as a son, I can't imagine what those families are going through right now, wanting answers. And I've had the opportunity to speak with some of the family members, and you know, they just want to know why. I mean, it helps them. So I mean, I would all but beg, you know, people that if they have any idea whatsoever, I mean, you know, it's, hey, this is not a whodunit. I mean, you know, the entire incident for the most part was captured on video. So it's just a matter of why, and what could we do if we know why. We may be able to prevent this, you know, in the future. I mean, if it's a mental health issue, if it's a drug issue, if there were red flags there that were ignored, you know, those are the type of things that we look at to try to prevent it. You know, unfortunately, in law enforcement, we find ourselves more times than not responding to something after it happened. But if we could prevent this from happening again, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm reminded, I mean, one of the tragedies that I was probably closest to was when former State Senator Bill Gwatney was shot at the Democratic Party headquarters.
Right.
And I'm sure you remember that day.
Yes, sir. Very
as well. We never found out motive of what happened because the suspect got killed, I think, in a gunfire exchange, and understandably so. But I think that's one of the things that's always frustrated me the most about that is just we never knew why.
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah, that was that was one that was personal for me as well. I was on Governor Beebe's protection detail at that time, and I knew Bill very well. He and the governor were close personal friends.
Yeah.
I was actually in Denver when that incident occurred. I was advancing the Democratic National Convention that the governor was going to be attending. If you remember, of course, that's when now President Obama received the nomination. And I got that phone call right as we were boarding a plane to come home, and literally was told by a flight attendant, "You've got to turn your phone off." And I had from Denver to Amarillo, Texas, I believe is where we changed planes, to just sit and think and stew about what in the world happened. You know, and it wasn't until we got there, you know, that we knew the gravity of that situation. So.
Let's turn our attention to the upcoming legislative session. I know it's a ways away. Is there anything that's going to be on your agenda from a state police or a public safety perspective?
Absolutely. You know, right now we are trying to get our ranks back up to where they need to be. People that have heard me speak at all, they're sick of hearing these talking points. So if you've not heard this,
how low are we in terms of where we need to get up to?
Well, I'll give you an idea. So I started this position in January of last year. And in January of last year, we had 490 commissioned troopers, gun-toting, badge-wearing troopers that were working in state police. To put that in perspective, in the year 2000, 23 years earlier, we had 608. Wow. So if you do the math on that, at the population in 2000, based on the population today, we were at about one trooper per every 4,200 citizens. In January of 2023, we were at one trooper per about every 6,300 citizens. So it's hard to actually put a pencil to paper and say this is where we need to be, because every agency, state police agency, is different. But we would like to get back to that level where we're about one per 4,200, which means that our ranks need to be at 725.
We've got about 30 seconds left. What's the biggest deterrent to someone wanting to become a police officer or even state police officer? Is it pay? Is it lifestyle?
It's all the above, and honestly, kind of the negative perception that's been put on the state police, or not just state police, but law enforcement in general. You know, it's an honorable profession, it's an honorable agency, and even though we're comprised of humans and we make mistakes, as a whole, I can't think of a more honorable profession, and we need to overcome those things, whether it be pay or the lifestyle. Now, you know, there's some things about lifestyle we can't change, but that perception, we need to tell our story. We need to let people know what we're doing and what our troopers are doing for their community and get that story out there.
Colonel Mike Hagar, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the response that you guys performed down there in Fordyce and other law enforcement there too. Looking forward to learning more on that.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.